Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Hello in general. Thank you for joining me. My name is Catherine Beltran. I'm one of the trainers or subject matter experts here at Redtail Technology. Today, we have a new partner spotlight on MaxMyInterest. And now, before we really jump in and get a deeper dive into what our partner really offers, I do want to go over some basic logistics and reminders. First of all, the session will be recorded. So if you miss a few minutes or you just need to reabsorb everything mentioned today by watching it again later, you will be able to find this recording actually in two spots. So you can always find these available on our Redtail help desk, which you can access by clicking on the question mark in the top right-hand corner of the CRM. But you can also find it on our Redtail Technology YouTube channel. So either or is going to be available. Usually it's available about 1 week after. Don't quote me on that, but usually it's a really quick turnaround. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Michael. Michael, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Catherine.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining me, Michael. Now, before I really pass off the baton, I should say, and really let you talk about everything that's really exciting with this integration, I wanted to ease into it just a bit by getting to know, well, you actually. So really get an understanding of how you entered the industry and anything else that might help our attendees get to know you. So first question, what was your journey into this industry?
Great, thanks, Catherine. Yes, I've worked with financial advisors for more than 20 years. I started off working in consulting. Actually worked at Gemini Consulting, which puts out that sort of well-known World Wealth Report that talks about the high net worth market. I worked in interactive consulting and helped launch the first online bank, which is one of our clients in London. Then my journey took me to Morgan Stanley. I worked at Morgan Stanley for more than 10 years, helped launch some of their products, such as the bank deposit program, securities-based lending, a lot of different things in the sort of banking and wealth space. And about 5 years ago, I was looking to do something more entrepreneurial and was introduced to our founder, Gary Zimmerman, who'd started a very interesting business that I'll be, talking about today that really helps advisors help their clients to earn more in their cash. So that's kind of my journey of, how I came to Max.
Well, that's very awesome. And we're actually going to kind of tee off something you already briefly mentioned there, but how did the company really come to be?
Yeah, so the company was started in 2014. Our founder had been working as an investment banker. And, really the origins of the company came from the financial crisis of, 2008, 2009 that we all remember. And at that time, he was working at Citibank, and Citibank had a near-death experience. Briefly, the stock traded under $1. And he had all of his liquidity, having sold his apartment in New York, sitting in cash. And he suddenly realized that he was going to become an unsecured creditor of the bank, which is not a good place to be since he was over the FDIC limit. So the quickest thing he could think to do was to open a series of online bank accounts. And he'd done some research and found that that was, one, a place that delivers higher yield, and two, delivers the same FDIC insurance as keeping it at one bank by spreading it across multiple banks. And essentially by doing what Max does using technology on his own, by just logging in and checking rates and moving funds when he saw the rates would go up or down, he picked up a pretty significant amount, north of $40,000 over 2 or 3 years, and had realized that he'd sort of identified an arbitrage opportunity, or in simple terms, just a way for individuals to earn more on their cash while keeping relatively high balances, which is where a lot of investment advisors, are focused. Through doing something relatively simple by simply helping clients to allocate their funds across multiple banks and earn a higher rate because the online banks pay a higher yield.
My God, I had like literally absorbed it. And I'm like, right when you said 2008, I'm like, say no more. I don't want to talk about it. But it's really positive. It's a great way to really get that going. Now, speaking of positives, another thing I know our users are always really curious about, and the first question I really have for you on this product is, how does your product save an advisor time or money?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny, we don't actually often highlight that as much because people often will just sort of gravitate to talking about the yield. But you're absolutely right. Max actually does help advisors, and we hear them tell us that repeatedly, because essentially we're helping solve the problem for the advisor who has a client who has a certain amount of cash or liquidity that's uninvested. That's really our focus. It's held away cash. It's cash that's typically not in the portfolio, although we can help with those type of requirements, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And they're saying, where can I put my cash to earn a decent rate of return? And so, what happens is a lot of advisors end up having to go and do a little bit of research, like who's paying the best rates now, and they go to Bankrate or they go to different websites and they start looking in the newspaper, and that can be time consuming. And the bank that has the best rate now might not have the best rate in 2 months, and then you're kind of caught in this sort of game of kind of always, trying to look around for the best rates and why did this one change and so forth. So what we really help clients do, and we actually had an advisor say this client gave him a hug for having, delivered the service to her, where she had been literally driving around to different banks, trying to get the best rates. She was in a more rural area. So we save advisors time by one, having to do all the research by looking around at all the different online bank yields. And then I think there's a second way, which is because we're integrated with Redtail, a client can help be set up using Max by having all the information that the advisor would have in Redtail, and just bring that over to help kick off the the setup process for Max, which we'll talk a little bit about during the webinar.
Perfect. And that's actually a really great segue into really demoing what you're actually offering here today. So I know this is the main thing everyone wanted, as much as they'd love to hear about more of us, because we could easily, I'm sure, talk about ourselves and really our companies. They're really great companies to work for. But I do want to go ahead and pass it off to you, Michael, and really start to talk about that presentation that you have offered. So without further ado, I will give you control. If you want to go ahead, you could share your screen and I'll let you deeper dive for everyone else on today.
Okay. So before we jump right into showing what the advisor experience is, and I'd just like to give a little bit more detail in terms of the value that we can bring to advisors. So first, you've heard the story of how the company began. Let me just also add to that by saying we're working with over 1,200 wealth management firms. Some of those that we're working with are listed here. Dynasty Financial Partners is one of the more famous networks. We also have integrations, of course, with Redtail, but also with Orion, Morningstar Bio Accounts, and Money Guide as well, with more on the way. And the way Max helps the financial advisor and the wealth management firm is we provide a way to deliver a higher yield on held away cash for clients. And what this does in terms of benefit for the advisor is it's a way to strengthen existing relationships. Clients are asking, how can I do better on my cash? We talked a little bit about that. We're actually also sometimes told that we're an asset discovery tool, and that the by offering such a high rate of return on cash, that money comes sort of out of the woodwork. And, our point of view is we're not an investment advisor. We're not trying to compete with advisors. We really only do one thing, which is provide a service, for advisors and their clients to earn more in cash. So, we're always happy for advisors to identify cash and bring that into the investment portfolio. We don't really have a point of view on how much cash people should hold. That's really up to the advisor and the client. So the other thing is that we do feel that this helps advisors give more holistic advice, because some don't use aggregation because of sort of the headaches of linking external accounts we sometimes hear. And so with Max, clients don't have to share their logins. And that's just a terrific sort of modern way to do things these days, with people concerned about privacy and security. So those are the key benefits to the advisor. We do talk a little bit about the fact that cash is sometimes more than some advisors realize in terms of a client's total net worth. That World Wealth Report that I mentioned earlier, that research shows that for a typical high net worth household in the US, so that's 400,000 household income and up, they keep about 22% of their total net worth, excluding the value of their home, in liquid assets, cash. And so that's often quite a bit more than is actually in the investment portfolio. And most advisors do see that because the allocation to cash is usually a single-digit percentage, and it varies by firm. We're just trying to emphasize that we're really the solution for that larger portion, that sort of 20% or so, where clients are just keeping cash in their own bank or in CDs and different places. But we can certainly work with advisors that have clients who have significant cash, are frustrated with the yields on money market funds or so forth. We can absolutely support those individuals. They just simply are moving funds into bank accounts as opposed to keeping them within a money market fund. So we can really help advisors with both situations. So at the end of the day, we're a yield story. A lot of advisors tell us. With Max, clients can keep very large balances, fully FDIC insured. We'll talk a little bit more about those balances, but a sort of typical balance for us is a few $100,000 up to, seven figures, mid seven figures. We can go even higher than that, which we'll talk about, but, I'd say a sweet spot for us is, 100K, a few 100K, that sort of thing. Pretty run of the mill in terms of your typical client who might have $1 million and $2 million invested. So we're able to, through what we do, which is help clients to open online bank accounts. And then we often will have market leading rates at those institutions that might be, better than they could otherwise find on their own. And so, right now the highest rate on the platform is 0.6%, but we're in a very low rate environment right now. It's very unusual. With everything that the Fed has done and the pandemic, we just remind advisors that go back 18 months, we were delivering on our platform 2.72% was the highest rate on cash. So you can expect that as rates rise, in particular with our service, but just in general, that when rates rise, Max is, very much at the top in terms of the opportunity. But right now with money market funds at, 1 basis point, or the National Savings Bank average of, 4 basis points, with Max, the clients could be earning 60 basis points. So it's a pretty good story, and it really helps a lot of advisors who are just looking for another option to use with their clients. Last thing to say on this page is just simply, to the advisor, what else do we offer? Of course, the big story is integrations, but for those that maybe have unusual choices for what they're using, their own reporting systems that they built, or just a seldom used tool. What's nice about Max is we come sort of out of the box with a Max Advisor dashboard. So no matter what you're using for your reporting, you can always see your clients' Max balances. So the balances allocated across different high yield savings accounts directly from a dashboard. And keep in mind, we're free to advisors, we're free to wealth management firms. So it's, there's no cost to using Max. We're just a simple tool in the toolkit. And that dashboard gives access to the latest collateral, support materials. You can see a setup guide and rates. We'll show a little bit of that later. It's where the enrollment process can be kicked off. And it's just got a breadth of information in addition to showing whatever clients you have there. All right, so this shows a Max account, which has 907,000. I'm sure that's exactly the amount of cash you're keeping in your bank account. What's fun is with demo accounts, it can be whatever balance we like. As I mentioned, a sort of typical client balance would be sort of, multiples, 6 figures, 3, 4, 500,000, something like that. But we certainly have some clients with 7 figures, mid 7 figures, and the largest account we've done is, quite a bit larger than that. We can support FDIC-insured accounts up to 100 million. So we can really go as high as many advisors would need in liquidity events where their clients are at a company going public. So really what I would emphasize is there are 2 ways of using Max, and I'm actually not showing you the most common, but this is sort of our origin story of where we began. So it's a nice way to kind of talk about things. So with Max, one of the 2 ways that clients can use Max is through linking their existing checking account. We call this BYOB, bring your own bank. It works with about 20 or so, actually it's about 8, actually it's 18 right now, of the sort of largest banks in the country, as well as some other options. And so used this way, and this is, as I mentioned, where we began. A client would bring their existing bank account or BYOB, and they can set a target balance. So kind of our origin story includes a little behavioral finance with the idea that a lot of people keep more money in their checking account than they really would make sense. It's really not kind of in your best interest to keep a lot of money in a checking account. And so what Max allows clients to do is to set a target balance. And what we do is the service monitors their balances, and then on one day of the month that they've chosen to have Max do this, which we call an optimization, we take a snapshot of their balances. And if they've accumulated, an additional 10,000 and they have 60,000 in checking, but their desire is to keep that more sort of in the $50,000 range, what Max would do is it would see there's an excess 10,000, it would sweep those funds, or those funds would be sort of proposed to them so that they could be swept, with their instructions to earn a higher return across some of their online savings accounts, which we call optimized savings total. So that's one way of using Max. The other way is, we wanted to expand Max so that more could take advantage of it. And so for those that use thousands of other different, one of thousands of other different institutions, we actually offer a way to use Max without bringing your own bank account to sort of service that sort of central account that handles some of the transfers as the rates change, which I'll speak about in a moment. So this can simply say Max in the upper left. It's a free checking account. It actually does pay an interest rate of currently 20 basis points. But the important thing is that account can be then funded in turn by the client's existing checking account. It could be funded by their savings account. You can link multiple funding accounts to it. You could link it to a Schwab or a Fidelity account and fund it that way. You can push funds in using various methods. You could wire funds in if you like. Another advantage of using Max to handle all the transfers is that clients don't need to share any logins whatsoever. So they can not share their Schwab login and just simply sort of push funds in from Schwab or Fidelity or whatever custodian they would like, or link it to just their savings account. So a lot of different options. And so that's really what we see as the most popular way to use Max these days, is it says Max up here in the upper left. But what the most important thing is, no matter which way a client is choosing to use Max, it does the same thing. And what it does is it helps them earn more on their cash and keep them fully FDIC insured. So what Max does is it will propose an allocation just based on a simple waterfall. The rates of the online savings accounts are all listed here. It's important to point out that each of these online savings accounts is a no cost or no minimum, no fee. Really, we try to keep it simple for advisors. What we're doing is a little bit unusual compared to how a lot of folks just sort of operate on autopilot. So as a result, we try to keep it very simple. So you can think of all these accounts as just, interchangeable. So they're all no fee, no minimum accounts. They're listed force ranked highest to lowest by interest rate. And what's great about that is that then it's just very easy for a client when they log in to see, oh, I see I have opened this account and this account. Maybe this client already had an existing Ally account, for instance. And they could say, well, I'm earning 50 basis points. With Max, they could say, oh, I actually could earn 60 basis points on that, pretty significant amount of funds. And so one of the great things about Max is the way the account opening process works. So for 5 of the 9 options that we support, the account can be opened in literally 60 seconds or less. And a client would simply click open instantly. We have connections into the bank's core banking systems. We have a secure API connection. We know all the KYC. We have all the terms and conditions. We've worked this all out with the banks. And sort of in 60 seconds, you can have a new bank account, lickety split, without having to go through onerous trial deposit steps, without having to create a username and password at different banks. You can skip all that and just have a new bank account in under a minute, which is pretty exciting. So the other things that I want to emphasize about what Max does is it keeps the funds always earning the highest interest rate. So you'll remember I spoke about once per month, Max helps perform an optimization where it sort of looks at that target balance. Well, the other thing Max does is it always lists these banks rank ordered highest to lowest by interest rate. So to choose a little more simple example of maybe a client that had a single individual, unmarried, single, they have 275,000 sitting in the bank. Maybe they're saving up for their first home. So what Max would propose as an allocation is, and if they chose to do that, would put the first 250 at the highest paying rate, so 60, and then any amount to keep it fully FDIC insured would flow over to the second highest paying rate. So it would be sort of 250 here and 20 here. And what Max does is it actually keeps it just below the FDIC limit, just to allow for principal and accrued interest to never exceed the FDIC limit. So it would be 249,500 in the case of an individual, or 499 for a joint account. But what happens if it's 250 and 50 here, and then all of a sudden Ally wakes up and raises their rate to 1%? These kind of things do happen all the time. Rates actually are fairly volatile when they're not in this sort of current period where everything's very low. But before you know it, things are happening again. And with Max, it helps you to take advantage of those rate changes. So what would happen is at the time of the month, Ally would be listed first. It would be listed at 1.0%. And then instead of just having $1, because what Max will do is propose that you keep $1 in any account that sort of wouldn't otherwise be funded, all of a sudden Ally is the leader, it's listed first, and then your proposed optimization would then result in funds going first to Ally to pick up that really high interest rate. So what I'd emphasize is that the advisor doesn't have to do anything. The client simply has to review, proposed optimizations. It's really something that is pretty remarkable. We get a great amount of positive feedback about this as doing something that's not exactly a me too. This is not exactly just something that everyone else has. We actually have patents on how we do this, and so Michael Kitzes has written about us, and you could read articles as well. In the Wall Street Journal, Jason Zweig has written about us. So there's sort of an interesting story behind what we do. So I've talked a little bit about the main features of what Max helps people do. And I should mention a few other minor points, which is we can change these from individual, joint, or custom settings. Max works by helping clients with individual, joint, or living trust or revocable trust accounts. We have another solution for other types of accounts, which I can mention at the end. But most advisors are using kind of our flagship solution known as Max. So just moving on, I've talked about most of the key benefits. It's, the ability to get, very exciting rates. It's the ability, if you'd like, to have the sweep to maintain your account, or in most cases, just sort of keep it as a standalone account to the side. The ability to take advantage as rates change. Those are all really important things. I think the other thing that we're proud of as well is that we're advisor centric. So unlike telling someone to go, open an Ally account, which is perfectly fine, with Max, actually in the client's profile is their advisor relationship. So scrolling down, you can see that you're associated with that. So that gives you that ability to see those balances without their having to share their Ally login. And we think that's a very helpful feature. We hear that aggregation can result in aggravation. And so we've heard too many stories of that. So with Max, all those things are a lot easier to do than you would otherwise. Just sort of pushing through a few more little minor things. We really value transparency. Clients can click in and see their optimization history, where were their funds across all their different accounts. They can tick and tie everything. We really like that. We're actually in the process of updating our performance report to make it even better. But what a lot of advisors like to see is sort of what is that estimated annualized interest income. And this is just a great story for advisors because they can log in and sort of see that their client is picking up, most likely compared to where they were, maybe it's 4,000 or even 40,000 of incremental interest income. And so that's just a nice value add to say in a time when it can be difficult to sort of generate alpha, if you're a modern portfolio believer, but a lot of people just sort of inertia and they keep their cash in places where it's really not in their best interest. Another feature that we hear a lot of nice feedback about is consolidated tax reporting. no one likes tax time, but often with online banks, some of them won't mail you a 1099. Some you have to log in and get it from a vault. Some mail it, some don't. It's here, it's there. With Max, we just gather all of your 1099s, all the clients' 1099s, put them into a single password protected PDF, make that easy to share with your tax preparer. And we also offer the client the ability to CC the advisor on that, just sort of emphasizing our focus on the financial advisor relationship. So that really sort of wraps up what Max does and how it helps clients. What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about the integration. Let's see. So I will now just sort of move on to talk about how that works. So Catherine, we don't need to sort of hand back over to you at this point. So we're just going to sort of move on to the next.
That sounds perfect, because I was going to just ask, I'm like, okay, I've got all of these like great ideas. How does it integrate? Because I know that's what our attendees are asking too. They're like, what are we doing?
Exactly. So why are we here? So it's all about Redtail. So we are big friends of Redtail. We've known them from going to conferences for many years, and so we're very excited to be we're excited to have announced our integration with Redtail this year. The way the Redtail integration works, without doing a lot of clicking around, I can do that in a second. It's very simple. When you're logged into Redtail, you simply first you want to do is enable your integration. So it's simply you go down to manage your integrations. You'll see Max as a integration option. All you have to do is slide that slider over. That basically gets Max so that it's connected. And what that does is it connects. And one thing will point out is I didn't share the advisor dashboard. It's really a simple, you go in and register. I did mention it. It's how you basically access our collateral. So in 1 minute, you just say, I'm an advisor, first name, last name, and you have your advisor dashboard. Once that's in place, you go to Redtail, as I mentioned, go into manage your integrations, find Max. We actually call it Max for advisors. And then just slide that over. Then Max is all set up for you as a Redtail user. And then the integration is very simple. It really helps to facilitate the whole process of helping a client to open a Max account and get started to use Max. So Max is a service. And I didn't mention, but Max charges 2 basis points per quarter for the service in order to give you access to those preferred, to those market leading rates and to the service, the consolidated tax reporting, the better terms and conditions and so forth. So it's, and then all you have to do is sort of help introduce them to get the process started. The actual client opens all the bank accounts on their own. That's a requirement. So all really the advisor client service team is sort of helping to kind of nudge that process so the client can begin. So they don't have to type in their information, such as their name and address and such. So once it's enabled, as I mentioned, which is available through Manage Your Integrations, then you simply navigate to a client record. Here we have Mary Investor, and then it's just as simple as going to pulling down here, finding Max for Advisors, and then clicking on Send Invitation. And then that's it. That's the workflow, folks. Thank you for coming. No, what's actually fantastic about Max is that there's really not a lot of training for those in the operations team and client services team. We do have great support information, and we do walk through people how the client actually gets things set up. But with the Redtail integration, it's pretty straightforward. You enable it. You do have to then log into just a one-time login to your Max Advisor dashboard when you enable that integration. But then once you're there, it's just as I mentioned, you're looking at a client, you click integrations, you go down to Max, and you send the invitation. So that's it. It's really that simple. And what that does is it actually pre-fills the account opening forms so that one, it's causing you to not have to take your time to re-enter information you already have in your leading CRM platform. So it saves the client from having to type in that information. You avoid errors. And it really just makes it a very streamlined process. And the concept of send to is one that we know is familiar to those in the industry. So it's just like you would send an account to eMoney, you can send it to Max. And then what I can do is actually just also briefly share, if we can do this. Do we still have time, Catherine, to
Yeah,
do?
you're still good, actually. And I was just going to say, honestly, sometimes with integration, short, simple, and sweet is the best thing we can ask for. So when we have an integration that really is like a 3-click, oh, it's heaven on earth, honestly. But we did have, if you want to go ahead and open up whatever, yep, perfect. If you want to go ahead and open up that, we'll kind of wrap up this section and then we'll open it up for that Q&A, because I did see actually a couple questions come in. So I do see them. I promise you we're not ignoring you. We will just make sure we get all of those answered towards the end of this webinar.
Okay, great. So after a client has been invited, they receive an email, very friendly email, just saying, dear Margaret, your financial advisor has invited you to sign up for Max. They click start earning more. They just simply confirm the title, set a username and password. From there, they can review the T's and C's, click agree. Then it's just a little explainer about how Max works, how the funds move from one account to the other through whatever linked checking account they've chosen, whether it's BYOB or our own integrated Max checking option, which has a number of advantages, as I mentioned. So, then the client is just prompted, which way would you like to use Max? As I said, the most popular is, with the integrated Max account option to handle those transfers. From there, once they do that, we launch into the Common application. So this is modeled after the Common App for colleges, if you're familiar with that process, where you don't have to send in paper applications to 6 or 7 colleges anymore. So with Max, we kind of modeled it after that. So clients choose the number and name of the banks they'd like to use. Worth pointing out that most people do not open every single option. Rather, it really depends on how much they're looking to have FDIC insured. So it's typically 2 to 3 accounts, but it can be more. A lot of clients just choose based on the rate, but some, might have an existing account at Ally and, or they, have heard of a particular bank. But it's completely up to the client. They choose which accounts they would like. They're all FDIC insured. And then from there, just scrolling down, oh, there we go. Then from there, a few questions about, which, KYC questions and so forth. But it's, as I said, end to end, it's 2 minutes. And then they land on their dashboard. So here you see sort of Max checking up here. And then if they don't already have an existing account at Ally or such, then they just link a funding account. And as mentioned, we can go over this if people reach out to me. We have support materials. If you're linking it to Schwab or if you're linking it to Fidelity, there are a few steps. Or the client can just go in here and link their own savings account, bank account, or other account. But that's really it. And then they are done. And so it's a really pretty amazing end-to-end process for getting. We think it's the fastest account opening process that we've been able to find. And so that's it. That is the walkthrough of the account opening process. I think I did say that I'd mentioned just at the end a couple other sort of side notes. We do support other account title options. It's just a different workflow. But if you do have a client with a complex trust, such as an irrevocable trust, or the client owns a business, or it's an LLC, or it's a foundation, a nonprofit, you can still reach out to us. We have that option. It's just a little bit of a different workflow, and we do that through a partner, but we have market leading rates, and we absolutely help clients of advisors with those opportunities all the time. But, out of our bread and butter is the Max flagship solution, and that's where we spend most of our time. So that's why we spent time focusing on the webinar on that today. So that's it, Catherine. I am ready to answer any and all questions.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you on behalf of not only me at Redtail, but everyone else who also came on. I know we definitely appreciated you taking that time today. So I actually have a first question here. So it's a little bit lengthy, so bear with me, but it does say, does the client have to log in to move the money around, or is it automatic? I.e., if rates change, does the money move to the best rate / account, or will the client have to go in and move it themselves?
That's a great question. Yes, no, the client does not need to do anything. Essentially, we're following their instructions, but their instructions to us are that they would like to sort of by default keep the funds fully optimized, which just means earning the highest rates that they can and keeping it below the FDIC limit. So unless they've paused their optimizations, which is an option, didn't mention that, but some folks do, if they're coming up on tax time or they're making a big tuition payment or just there's a lot going on in their lives, they will pause them. But generally speaking, most, just sort of say, just propose those. And then if they don't take any action, then Max will ensure that they don't drift over the FDIC limit. So there's no action that the client has to do.
Perfect. Next question, a little bit easier one here. How do we sign up?
Sure. It's easy. Simply go to, it says financial advisors here, register. And then once you click register, let me see if I have this available. Actually, I'll just do that right now. This is that dashboard for advisors. In a minute or two, just give your advisor name, just say I am an advisor. We want to keep this only for advisors, and those that are not advisors, contact us directly. So an advisor could just simply get access to this. To get started, it has a getting started guide right here under advisor resources. The advisor resources tab has information for advisors, including we also have the option to co-brand this, to have your firm's logo in the upper left and that across the sort of all the user interactions, including emails. Max is free to advisors. That's the one thing that we do charge just a nominal setup fee. It's not a profit center for us. It just covers our costs. But there are these resources for advisors here, and then there are resources for clients, including a setup guide, which can be shared with clients. And then within advisor resources, there's a fact sheet as well, and that shows our current rates. Another great way to remember or find our rates is Max for Advisors. It's MAXFOR, then advisors spelled either way. If you're at an OR or an ER, maxforadvisors.com/fact sheet, one word. And that will bring up the current rates right there. So that's how you can get started. You can also on our page, get our contact information. And our contact information is actually pretty easy to remember. It's advisors@maxmyinterest.com. And we would be happy to, set up a phone call, walk you through, answer any additional questions, that sort of thing. But there's really no, paperwork to sign. You're just sort of going in, registering as an advisor. And one thing I mentioned is that even though we have that setup process through Redtail, we also, have some advisors who say, well, I'm just going to mention this to clients. And sometimes that happens as well. But we know that having a Redtail integration makes it even easier because you're saving your clients time and making it just very much more simple and easy for them.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.